Hi, welcome to White Women Wake Up. I'm Karen.
And I'm Jonelle. We're here to challenge cultural norms, unpack our privilege, and foster empathy through new intergenerational conversations. Let's wake up together.
We have our first guest. Yay, we're so excited. Let me introduce Dr. Raedene Copeland. Ray is a powerhouse brand strategist, leadership expert, and speaker. She's the founder of Achieve Brand Consulting. She helps leaders develop their vision and streamline strategies for lasting impact. Previously, she served as assistant provost of inclusive faculty excellence and associate professor at Seattle Pacific University, where she led faculty development and drove institutional change. Ray and I have had the privilege of working together on DEI committees, and I've seen firsthand her passion for creating meaningful change through transformational leadership. As a naturalized U.S. citizen, Dr. Copeland brings a unique insider-outsider lens to leadership as a universal language. Welcome, Dr. Copeland.
Welcome, and thanks for having me. I'm so excited to just support you all on this journey and connect with you again. It's been a while.
Yes, well, we are so excited, and we are so thankful for your willingness to come alongside this journey of transformation, where Jonelle and I are really trying to have honest and authentic conversations, particularly to white women, around our biases. And so today's topic, one of the ways that we do this, Ray, is each week, Jonelle and I bring up a topic to each other, just like a conversation that the other person may not know about. And so I've been thinking a lot about what's going on in the government right now in this language of colorblindness. And I think the challenge with colorblindness is it's very misunderstood. So I kind of just simply, no, I think it really is. And I'm reading some pros and cons and everything. So I want to start out with both you and Jonelle and asking, what is your concept of racial, and I need to say racial color blindness or biases. What is your concept of what color blindness is?
You want me to go, Ray, or you?
You can go first. Yeah, I will. I'm the guest, so I'll go.
You'll probably say it more eloquently than I will too. So it's that way. I mean, my idea of colorblindness was kind of this evolution in, people's perspective of evolution and equality to look at things on, like, quote unquote, a level playing field. And so everyone basically identifying as everyone the same. But I think, as we've learned or understand, is equality and equity are not the same thing. And so understanding that people have different life perspectives that bring them more forward in life or more back in life, and that looking at things at more of an equitable plane than an equal plane, if that makes sense. Or am I like overly? But basically, colorblindness is not actually fair.
Yeah.
I think is kind of what I'm saying.
I think it's interesting when you said that. The first thing in my head as I was thinking is the kind of term whitewashing, but that's kind of what the results have been. But anyways, okay, Ray. So just again, I'm kind of opening this up. What are some of your thoughts, or what do you believe colorblindness to be?
And I'm going to just be here today as a regular person, because we're talking to regular people, right? Yep. I would say that my gut instinct from being in America for all those years and learning about various of these policies, a variety of these policies, is that colorblindness, of course, is an attempt at a level of erasure in, like, differences, right? An erasure of differences. It's like, oh no, all this racism talk. No, we're colorblind. We don't see your color. So everything that is happening in society is not because of the color of your skin, right? It's just because we are treating you as equal, right? It's this attempt at equality in a way to say none of these things that happened in the past and nothing like the old Jim Crow era, everything, none of those things matter because we just see you as equal when all the evidence persists that that is not true. I mean, not even babies see people the same. So grown people talking about, I don't see that you're chocolatey and I'm a different complexion. Like, no, it's like I look at the Crayola box and I see all the colors in the Crayola box to see.
Yeah.
It's I'm trying to choose my words very carefully.
Yeah.
I think it's an attempt to sanitize the past, but it's not an honest attempt to do so. So I will stop right there and we can build.
No, it's so interesting because as we're kind of going through this journey and unpacking some of these preconceived ideas, and I talk to other, especially in my generation, white women, and like I had this conversation the other day, and someone said, "Well, I don't actually know what color blindness is." And so one of the things, so I'm trying to take it from all these different angles. So in a utopian society, the concept of seeing one another for who we are, not seeing, not seeing us as our racial makeup, but just who we are. Yes, this idea makes sense. Okay. So like a lot of one of the things that I was reading, acknowledging that many white women were raised with the idea that not seeing race was a virtue. It wasn't a negative. And because the way that it was perceived was this idea that we're all equal. We're all created equally.
I mean, I think Ray said it beautifully.
Yeah.
When you said it's a way to try to sanitize the past.
Yeah.
I think that's,
well,
I think that's exactly like what we as white women have been taught, is just to be like, okay, it's okay and move on. Like, we're okay to have learned and moved on kind of thing. And not recognizing that there's a history.
Yeah.
Well, this that impacts still things today.
And that's one of the things as you start. So maybe even agreeing on the first concept of what is colorblindness. Colorblindness is this kind of erasure of the other person's race. You don't see it. That's supposedly what it is. We're not discriminatory on race. The downside when we start living life out this way is we don't actually see how the systems have played into our racial discrimination has played into the system. So it actually stops the conversation. So one of the things I wanted to ask you, Jonelle, me, Ray, have you ever had that experience where someone said, "Well, I just see us as equal," and it actually is a way of kind of policing that conversation. Have you ever had that? Or Ray, how about you? That ever been a situation for you?
Not quite. I think being an islander and having an accent, people lean more towards, "Oh my God, where you from?" We have a different lived experience in America, immigrants from the Caribbean and so forth. But I can talk about us from the Caribbean because people are quite fascinated with our accents and everybody loves the islands. So everybody loves the islands. So the conversation goes there. But I've had other comments where it's clear that people see my race, but you're not like those other Black people.
Oh,
Yeah, so we've had this comment, but that might, as I said, that's a different conversation, and I am a very focused
but that's really interesting. So in other words, they othered you, right?
Oh yeah, that's what happens in America with the immigrants and the local Americans, right? African Americans. It's the other end. So within that's what I'm saying. It's not an honest effort, because when we come over as outsiders and we are not in the house, like we are visitors to your house, right? And call your house America, right? To your house, the United States. There are things said to us because we are outsiders that wouldn't be said, but the locals will tell us that is what they're going to say. So it's like, oh, but you're different to them. No, I'm not. No, I'm not that different. So it's like, so then you don't see color, like if it's politically correct to say, but then you do see color. And then within our beautiful shades of skin, you're now creating micro and subcategories
Yeah.
to divide and conquer us, right? In that way. So that's why I said it's not an honest attempt at anything. It's an attempt of just distraction. Like, let's not deal with it. Because for us really to unpack this whole suitcase of stuff in storage and to come and unpack it, it's a lot of work. And when I used to teach my students as an outsider, having to learn, just attempt to learn the cultural history and all of the dynamics of the different races and ethnicities and all sorts of stuff, I used to empathize with them. I said, I know this is a lot because coming from another country and just getting cable as your form of information, we may come to the United States with some of the assumptions if we don't know all of the historical history, right? Because if you're looking at movies and stuff, and that's where they did a lot of the social stratification of, who is always the doctor, who's always the single parent, who's always this. If you're looking at that, you come from your country where you don't have that presence, that dominant presence of making you feel like you're less than. So you come here with that level of like, oh yeah, these people are this way. Because if you don't interact and you're not in that culture and have that lived experience, you have to learn and understand what's at play. So a lot of people don't see the system at play. So it's easy for them to say these things don't exist. And I'll pause there. So
Yeah. No, and I think that this is the big issue, right? Like they're not seeing how by not having these conversations, by being afraid, like one of the things that color blindness can do, for example, is it creates this space for a white person to be afraid to talk about race because they think that they're going to say the wrong thing instead of having the conversations as people to people so that you then can learn from each other. One of the things that I think is so unique about you too, Ray, is your whole dissertation is around how we understand each other's cultures by visual language, by the languages of dress and so forth. So this notion of wanting to tell our stories, our unique stories of who we are, gets lost in the language of color blindness because it becomes a single story. It doesn't become a story where we get to know each other uniquely. I don't know if that's anything that resonates with you, but how do you speak on that? How do you help people get beyond being able to actually talk about one another's lives, I guess that is?
yeah. So Jonelle, did you want to say anything before I expound it?
No, I love where this is going. I was going to take a different perspective on some things, but but go answer the question. I love where you're taking this.
Okay, so let me just respond to this. I think a key part of this colorblindness is who holds the power in society, what group? Because if I go to a white person and say, I don't see that you're white. In fact, you can be black to me. You can be Asian. White person will be like, what?
Yeah.
I'm not Asian. Like if you say these things, be like, oh, you're such an African. Yeah. And they'll be like, why you think that? I mean, because you just feel that way because I don't see your color. It doesn't work in the reverse. And that's why I'm saying it's a power dynamic because the only reason it needs to be in place and set is because the powers that be, whoever holds the status quo in society, has stratified society. And it's all with white people being on top and every other race getting a percentage of how less than in comparison to us you are. So the reason it works for one group to say they don't see us, the whole foundation of America is built on a stratification and people and trying to make people believe that no, you're really just equal, but we want to be seen.
Yeah.
Like I don't want my culture to be erased. I don't want you to see that I differ. The only reason you don't want to see my race is because you're fighting maybe negative opinions of me.
Yeah.
I see who you are, and I just want to put it out there for the listeners. Race is a social construct because there are a lot of people who are half black, half white, and appear white, but they're not really white. And that's a whole other thing about passing. But the point is that I grew up in a country where we celebrated the differences, the different races and cultures, because we did not put a negative connotation on it. The only reason there needs to be colorblindness is because you're trying to fight the fact and the allegations that are founded in historical evidence that you have put a negative connotation on my skin color. So from the time I appear in public, you have downloaded in 3 seconds all of these negative assumptions about me that I now have to go leap and fight and disavow. Kind of be like, this is not who I am. I am educated. Why are you calling me ghetto? Just because I'm black. So that is why it conveniently needs to happen.
Well, I think that's what I was going to kind of like move it to help our audience, for those who may still not be like fully grasping a little bit like the concept of this. And again, we've talked about analogies are not a positive thing, yet I still keep doing analogies. Is like framing it in the sense, when you asked if I have ever been othered, in that sense, I feel like this conversation for white women, if they can somewhat understand, is very similar to the conversation that we have with men about genders being equal. Like right now, there's a lot of progressive men out there who will talk about like, well, what? We've given you rights. We've given all these things, like genders are equal. But we as women understand that that is not the case.
Yeah.
Like we're not on an equal playing field because there's all this historical impact. And so that was kind of my analogies. I've had these conversations before with male friends, with my brother, things of that sort, that it's like trying to explain to them we're not on an equal playing field because you still have the upper hand in society. So like, again, that would be my closest analogy to help white women understand like the impact in the conversation around colorblind.
Yeah, because you said power struggle. I mean, it's a power switch, right? It's like if you were to switch it around and you were to say that about white people, it would feel very different, right? Ray, I wanted to say one other thing that I think that is so interesting about as we talk about the language of colorblindness, because if this is a place where a lot of white people are starting, and I see it because they're like, wait a second, I didn't even know this was a challenge because I've loved all my neighbors as who they are. One of the gifts that you gave me, Ray, when I started my not you, because you're a genius, but when I started my DEI efforts and things like that, I remember walking in to our space and thinking that our efforts were just simply about religion and being queer. I thought we had gone beyond the racial construct. And one of the things that you graciously did for me over those periods of time is you allowed me to simply be able to be who I am and to talk. And I know I'd walk away. Like I remember when I first entered our meetings, I couldn't even say black. Like I was like feeling like I was doing something wrong. Like I remember I said, "Oh, are you African American?" And you were like, "No, I'm from Trinidad." And you're like, "Get to know me, girl."
Yes, I'm saying, but that's what I'm speaking about with the sensitivity. It's like when I try to at least walk in as best as I can walk in my students' shoes, right? My white students, and when I had to cover these topics, I empathized and said, I understand. It's like you're just born into the family you're born into. You got on earth like earth. I'm here. Hi, humans. And then you learn all these things that are like, oh my God, my people are being accused of being racist. And so then the parents now, they come now and sanitize and be like, no, we're not. We don't see color. And we just, instead, and it's the whole argument they're making right now of, no, we're not going to teach the true history and all these things because people feel bad. But once again, which group of people?
Yes.
Which group of people will feel bad? And that's what the Justice Coalition did at SPU. They kept saying, okay, we engage the culture, change the world. And they asked that profound question of, who's engaging who and who is changing who. Right? And that is the whole idea. Who are these policies benefiting? Because when we tell our stories, who are we going to tell it as?
Yeah.
Like when we are recording incidents that happen, are we recording it as, oh, the police stopped a car and it had 4 friends in it and only one of us was arrested, even though the rest of us were doing the same things. And they will be like, which one?
Yeah.
That's the girl
So,
thing. So that's what I'm saying. It's kind of disingenuous. The whole
okay. Oh, good.
So we've talked before about the discomfort cycle with white women, especially how we just avoid discomfort at all costs. And this is again where I think a lot of colorblindness has come from, is our avoidance of discomfort, our avoidance of having the conversation, and our desire to be good people. Like, well, we're good people, we're well-meaning, we're nice. So then we just kind of want to like skim over it.
And the downside of all this is you just lose relationships. I mean, life is about this.
I think there's a lot bigger.
Well, yeah, you're right. You're right. That's a very white. Yeah, that's a, yeah. Yeah, you're right.
No, I think you don't have authentic relationships. You don't have genuine relationships. Because if you are colorblind, the only way for me to show up in your world is to talk about everything from the dominant culture. Because when I say, as a Black woman, are you going to be like, oh my God, I never realized you were Black? And even this concept of Black, white, no, because how does it work?
Yeah.
How does it work? I can't speak from my lived experience and my unique identity. And also all of these colors, Black, white, red, whatever. Who came up with that? We didn't come up with that because what is Black? Like, I'm not Black. Black is this. Who came up with that? So it's like you create a system of differentiation and hierarchy and then flip it on us and say, oh, no, but no, wait, those colors, that doesn't matter. The census form has all of these differentiations. So what are you looking for if you're colorblind? Why do we need differentiations?
Well,
Why do we need
totally. And this is getting into like a more other topic, but the idea, you're right, like who came up with these colors?
Yeah.
And then so many people don't realize we have given different connotations with different colors.
Yeah.
Like, we think of white as pure and bright and angelic, and we think of Black as dark and negative. And so, again, that's just like another thing that people don't realize.
That keeps getting reinforced.
Systematically, like reinforced in the back of our head. And so, again, that is all of those, like you said, is going to shape the 2-second interaction you have with someone, and you don't even know all that inherited bias is in the back of your head.
Well,
you don't unpack that.
And Ray, one of the things that you said that was really impactful to me when we first met was this idea that you were a dominant race in your culture. So you grew up with really great self-esteem. You grew up with all of these attributes that we keep putting on the American white culture, which is so unfair, right? And it's been interesting. One of the things that I've been reading a lot about recently is like the Reconstruction era, when we had a lot of these Black towns in the United States. And in those Black towns, a lot of people were able to thrive because they weren't considered a minority. They got to be in government positions. And so we continue to put this kind of really, really bad oppression on people because of race, because of dominance, because of perspective, and we're doing it all over again. So one of the things that why Jonelle and I are starting really into this podcast is because we have heard over and over again, our Black sisters are exhausted. You don't want to. They're exhausted. They don't want to talk about race anymore. They want to move on with their lives. And so, if you could give us any advice on what should white women do right now? What should we be doing to help in this fight so that, I don't know, does the world become more equitable? What does that look like? What would you think? I don't know. I don't know if I'm framing that question great.
Exactly what? Yeah, I can't speak for everyone, but I think it looks like what you're doing. I do know one of the things I learned and living in the States is that, more than likely, one of the reasons I'm able to come in here during these times is because I'm from another country and I do have that dual identity and dual citizenship. But my African American peers will tell me very clear, no, we're not showing up for that. They're not showing up on a White Woman Wake Up podcast during this period. They're like, this has nothing to do with us. Because one of the things that is a through line in American history and stuff is the role of Black women, right? Black women standing strong. A lot of the advancements that Black women have fought for, white women benefited from it. And you look back and you'd be like, oh, like we fought for this, we did this. But white women are the biggest recipients, right? So there's the data that shows that. But I think as just people, period, during times like these are just throughout time, you just keep doing the work and and you're going to have detractors, but it's about your individual effort and how your little ripple, that butterfly effect, is going to create a bigger ripple. And as they say, who don't like it sucks salt. At the end of the day, you're doing something, and in putting yourself out there and having conversations, saying, I don't know it all. As I said, I didn't come here as professor, doctor. I didn't come out, the theorists say, I intentionally did not do that because it's almost like I just wanted to speak from a unstudied, we're not here like academics, like, oh, well, the theory says, and in 19, this, no, we're just talking about what is just our feeling about what it is. And I think you just continue to show up. So I showed up today because I am very supportive of your efforts. I know both of you.
Yeah.
And I understand that you represent the best of America in that you are able to say, hey, this is where I started with no shame. And this is where I'm at. And I'm still learning. So you represent that idea of, as humans, we are all on a trajectory and we all have multifaceted identities and we don't know everything, but is unwilling to face ourselves. That we keep growing and learning, and that ability to apologize and say, I really underestimated the impact this had on you. Like Jonelle, in your last podcast I listened to, when the Asian girl was saying, I didn't like Kendrick Lamar, you all jumped on her, that whole thing of like, oh, what you mean? And she was like, well, because I have a different identity. So I think it's really embracing that I'm not just Afro-Trinidadian. I'm a lot of stuff. I'm a woman, as we can think on gender. I'm somebody into fitness. We have all these psychographics and we're just on a trajectory, of learning. So,
it's interesting. There's this conservative group of Black people that are actually for colorblindness again and meritocracy. And so I thought that was like such an odd thing. And so I don't know if it's because they see it as this utopian way of viewing race. I don't know.
No, well, I said, and that is why I'm always concerned about minorities giving themselves a pass, because I see all of these things, colorblindness and meritocracy, as power plays that the disenfranchised groups adopt, because everyone wants to feel normal. Yeah. And the whole idea of them hijacking DEI and all of these things, we have done searches and all of these people are very qualified. Or the justices, they are highly qualified. The bar is way higher. So to adopt the language of the power brokers is in design how the system works. And Jonelle, what did you think about that?
That's exactly what I was going to say, except I was probably going to get a little bit more conspiracy theory added on to this. But it is a power play. I think it is, we had kind of talked about this, like utopian society is a simplified version that people can digest. And the reason why it's a power play is because it's easier for us to digest a simplified concept than it is the complication of what's really happening in our society.
Yeah.
And so most people do latch on to that simplified, idyllic concept as long as they're not feeling massive oppression. And as we talked about, like this systems of colorblindness, like racial systems, it's on a scale of basically the darkness of your skin tone. And so there's a lot of people out there who don't face the full oppression of it. And therefore it's easier to buy on to the utopian concept around it. And like my bigger conspiracy theory more around this, if we're really getting into it, is like, that is how, honestly, white men in power keep everyone oppressed. If we keep us distracted, if we keep us happy and utopian, and you keep us distracted by other societal issues, my biggest theory, and I feel like I'm only doing this because like Ray is here, and I'm like, yes, yes, is that like this is why I think abortion became such a huge issue in the recent years, like politically, is because white women were so focused on Black Lives Matters, and the white man needed us to separate. They needed us to not focus our attention
This is a whole nother
on
subject.
one concept, and therefore we were dividing and conquering. And so I think that's kind of the same thing around colorblindness. It's just this utopian society that you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's just kind of,
Well, I was shocked to see that there was actually Black people in favor of it. But you're right. Like you said, is it the power brokers remanipulating the way that people are thinking about things? Because it truly is a concept towards oppression, that it came out of the lens of, how do we see people when we go to imprison them and so forth. And so it is something that we need to really unpack so that we then look at social systems, look at institutional bias and racism and so forth. So anyways, the word utopia got everyone sparked, I think.
Yeah, and I just want to correct and say no, and Karen will know this from the retreat I did. No, the whole thing with around abortion is that it was predicted that the white race is going to be the minority race. And white women were in corporate and they were climbing the ladder. So it's almost as if I will let you know it's not just about people having babies, because if people are having babies, the Hispanics have babies. They do all these things, they're not having. It's not about those babies. That's what I'm saying. If it was just about babies, oh my God, and then all those brown, the brown babies will be great. But it's not about having more of those, it's having more white babies, and that might be controversial, but that is the truth. We did that at my retreat where we predicted by 2000 and it was 30 or something, white people were going to be the minority, and these white women and corporate would climb the ladder. They're married. We're in Seattle. I have friends who are married and their child is their dog. I talk about white people, their child is their dog. So they're like, go back barefoot in the kitchen and have some babies because our race is at risk of extinction. It's that sounds dramatic, but that's how they're acting, as if, but once again, colorblindness. But what happened to all those babies? You should keep all those people having a lot of brown babies. What's wrong with those babies?
This is crazy.
My mind is blown. Never thought about it from that perspective. I had talked about this. I don't even know why, and I feel so embarrassed that I've never even grasped to that point, because I've talked about this theory before and a lot, but that is like so spot on.
I think my homework for everyone listening is that while a lot of these terms are crafted by those in the status quo, like colorblindness and stuff, I always call on minority groups to acknowledge that they have been infected by these things too. So when you go to the different groups of minorities, it's easy for everyone to just be like, oh, white people. Yes, and they have created some of these terms to the benefit. I mean, as they said, society for them, by them, for them, right? That's what things are. But as other minority groups, I think sometimes they themselves can get into a lull and be like, I'm not impacted by it. I'm just stating the truth. And then they know, because that's how it works. That's how white supremacy works, by getting other minority groups to fight and vote against their interests and fight with each other. So now they are taking on that view of what they may say, take on the group of the dominant class, and they're categorizing and like, I don't see, but they do, because they're all of this, like, they make the Asians are like, all the privileged minorities, and they get really hurt by that. And then the Hispanics fight with the black. So my call to everyone is, no, seeing our beautiful differences, our varied skin complexions and so forth is homework. Like, you have to see that. And when you see someone, the lesson you have to learn is, how do I have a respectful conversation? Hi, my name is Raedene. What's your name? Okay. You have whatever it is, you just learn how to ask respectful questions. and listen to what people say. And there might be somewhere where you can integrate a question if you're curious, but you don't make assumptions about who people are, which we've all done.
Yeah.
As professors, we've all done. I just want you to know that we all are learning about different people. And sometimes we mess up and make assumptions, but that's why we all, no one is complicit. Everyone is impacted by systems that are set to divide and conquer and keep a social hierarchy. So,
okay.
yes.
So to recognize our skin colors and to see them and to enter into respectful conversations.
I love it.
Was that a good summary?
Yeah, and also call for all of us to not be complicit in that. All of us throughout the hierarchy, because if all of us are complicit in this whole colorblindness, and I'm just stating facts, and you don't realize, no, you're not stating any facts. Like what you're stating is what the dominant class wants you to say about the other classes. That's what I'm taking away. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Ray.
This has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for joining us and being our first guest. We really appreciate you.
We really appreciate you in so many ways, more ways than you can even imagine, Ray.
And
Thank you.
I appreciate you all. Yeah, genuine friendships. That's what we need to model.
Yes.
Now. Genuine friendships and show up for your friends.
Yes.
Like,
yeah. For our listeners, feeling up today's conversation sparked some reflection and inspired you to engage with the world in a new, more thoughtful way.
Until next time, stay curious, stay open, and let's keep waking up. Bye, Ray.
Bye.